So hi everyone, and as you all know, so I've been working on this issue for the past 13 years because I was my background is non-profit lah. Actually, I studied maths and I volunteered teaching maths to some youths through an NGO, rural youths. And how I came across the issue was because the youths that I was teaching, they had to volunteer in a learning center bah. So what my job was to drive them to the learning center and to pick them up. So how I started off doing this work is when one day I wanted to pick them up, and then but they were not done yet. They were still teaching the students, and what they were doing. I'm not sure if you know what learning centers are. Schools for children who don't get into public schools. So most of them are undocumented, stateless, or migrant children. So what I saw my youth were doing were playing with them, hugging them. And then at that moment where I was alone in the car, I felt a bit like this shame. Because for me, when I saw these children, like when you go to the pasar and all that, I feel like they are like a bit disgusted with them, that kind of thing. And here my youths, the ones I'm supposed to teach, are hugging them. So at that point, I felt this sudden, in this car alone, I just had that like eureka moment, but at that, actually, I was feeling very ashamed of myself because here I'm supposed to be the one teaching the youths, but they are teaching me such an important life lesson lah. And from there was no turning back lah. Dari sana, it somehow became my life mission because I'm actually half Filipino. So I feel that like if there's somewhere in that process of documentation that I didn't fulfill, I could have been them. So, which I didn't realize early on lah. So, with that, it became, even though I was working in an organization that works on sexual gender-based violence, I was doing a lot of the awareness programs. So I made it my mission to put as much of engagement with the migrant, documented, stateless communities. So that became my job lah. And in 2017, I started my own voluntary organization called ANAK. So we do a lot of work on paralegal aid, where we help in the process of getting documents in place for them to do the application of documentation. And most of the ones that we work with are actually, they have at least one citizen parent, because that's the only one that you can actually see that there is some kind of process. But other than that, we also do a lot of support for we do a lot of advocacy work, because the organizations that are out there mostly are education-based, so they provide learning centers and all that. But and so some of them, they want to focus on that, especially the older learning centers. So these aunties and uncles will say, no, you all go to the meetings, you'll go and meet the government, but we're all ready, we don't really, it's tiring to do that, so that's the help that they need lah. So that's part of what ANAK does. Yeah, and we do actually, because our founder, when we founded this was actually part of a research bah. But then, so because of that research work, we found some cases, and the cases we work on as a few of like-minded peoples lah. So then that's how the group was formed lah. So that's why we do a lot of research work. We do a lot of paralegal aid. We do information disseminating, translating information materials to the languages that the communities understand. And I always forget what we do, but I think, so since I forgot, I'll pass the time to Mukmin.
Sama sekali terima kasih atas sebutan Forever Sabah, dan maaf tidak kesampaian untuk ke sana. Ada beberapa urusan di lapangan yang harus diselesaikan. Jadi aku Mukmin, sekarang ini aku berada di organisasi Borneo Komrad lah. Jadi organisasi Komrad sebenarnya bermula daripada student movement, gerakan mahasiswa, dan kami masih lagi mengakui sebenarnya sehingga hari ini Borneo Comrade adalah gerakan mahasiswa yang mana bermula daripada Klub Sastra Mahasiswa dengan Suara Mahasiswa Universiti Malaysia Sabah. Jadi daripada situlah mulanya 2015 itu kami buat banyak aktiviti-aktiviti kemasyarakatan dan banyak turunlah ke kampung-kampung terpinggir di Sabah. Jadi ketika kita berada di universiti, kita mula berbincang dengan kawan mahasiswa dan pensyarah-pensyarah buku kajian-kajian case berkenaan masyarakat terpinggir lah di Sabah. Dan kebetulannya masyarakat kelas paling bawah, ekonomi paling bawah di Sabah ini adalah apa namanya? Masyarakat stateless sebenarnya. Jadi kita tidak boleh elak lah sebenarnya. Kalau orang cakap ada ke Borneo Comrade ini bergerak ataupun berjuang hanya untuk stateless, tidak sebenarnya. Kebetulan di Sabah masyarakat stateless ini adalah masyarakat yang paling bawah yang sepatutnya kita ambil peduli. Okay? Bukanlah maksudnya isu-isu lain tidak penting, tapi kita mahu pembangunan di masa akan datang yang bergerak yang di bawah ini. Tidak ada political mileage. Jadi apa yang kami buat di Borneo Comrade adalah kami menghantar aktivis-aktivis kami masuk ke kampung-kampung, tinggal di dalam kampung, menghayati keadaan sebenar di kampung-kampung. Ketika kita melakukan banyak advokasi sebelum ini, keluar masuk kampung, kita buat sekolah-sekolah jalanan, kita buat sekolah di Pasar Filipin, kita buat sekolah di Tuaran, buat sekolah di Tawau. Apa yang kita rasa adalah kita betul-betul tidak faham sebenarnya isu ni bagaimana, kenapa orang boleh hidup bagaimana semacam itu. Itulah sebabnya kami ambil keputusan aktivis-aktivis kami yang graduan ini kami carikan dana, kami hantar ke dalam kampung supaya boleh mengamati jadi apa yang di dalam kampung. Selain kami bangunkan projek pendidikan alternatif, kami banyak mobilize community ini untuk berorganisasi, membangunkan diri mereka sendiri, keluarga mereka sendiri, selain mengambil tahu isu-isu yang berkaitan dengan dokumentasi. Kenapa mereka boleh terjebak sehingga menjadi stateless. Jadi ini yang kami amati hingga membangunkan banyaklah projek-projek advokasi daripada bawah. Jadi matlamat besar kami sebenarnya juga mahu orang-orang komuniti stateless ini mendapat haknya, sama ada dia dokumentasi jenis apapun tidak kisah, tetapi kita mahu orang-orang ini diperjuangkan. Ya, setakat itu dulu.
Okey, terima kasih Anne dengan Mukmin atas pengenalan singkat padat yang mana Mukmin dan saya kenal dari UMS dan saya pun mengagumi apa yang dorang buat sekarang secara tidak langsungnya, memerhati daripada jauh dan sentiasa ikut perkembangan Borneo Comrade lah. Dan bagi soalan seterusnya lebih kepada kamu punya pengalaman, perspektif lah, tapi dua perspektif yang berbeza lah. Mungkin saya mau dengar lebih dalam lagi daripada si Mukmin berkenaan dia punya perspektif di on the ground. Sebab aku tahu kau orang yang sentiasa berada di lapangan, kau menyelam dalam di lapangan. Jadi aku mau tahu kau punya perspektif semenjak kau bergerak atas nama Borneo Comrade, apa kau punya perspektif berkenaan dengan isu stateless. Dan mungkin bagi Anne boleh explain lebih lanjut berkenaan dengan dari sisi yang lain, dari sisi undang-undang, dari sisi akademik dan dari sisi perspektif yang begitulah. So kita mau tengok dua sisi perspektif yang berbeza lah. So boleh mulalah Mukmin atau Anne.
Sebenarnya isu stateless ini sudah semua orang tahu sebenarnya, perkara ini sudah lama. Dan kalau projek pun stateless ini sudah lama berlangsung sebenarnya. Ada sangat banyak di dalam ladang, di pekan-pekan, di pinggir pantai, memang ada sudah sangat banyak lah. Tapi apa yang kami fikirkan ketika mahasiswa, kami berfikir sampai bila perkara ini mahu berterusan? Adakah sekolah-sekolah alternatif, projek-projek pendidikan ini cuma sekadar tuntutan charity, kan? kerja-kerja kemanusiaan sahaja, atau sebenarnya kita betul-betul mahu membebaskan mereka ataupun memberikan hak selayaknya kepada generasi ke generasi. Jadi itu yang kita fikir sebenarnya. Pertama kita mencuba bawa isu ini naik ke atas. Dulu kita hairan sebab kenapa isu ini tidak digembar-gemburkan kan. Jadi bila kita masuk kampung, kita banyak berbincang di universiti, kita lihat rupa-rupanya isu ini dijadikan isu-isu yang tabu dan isu-isu yang sensitif. Jadi orang takut untuk bercakap tentang isu-isu ini. Bukan tidak ada, sebab saya pun dengan N sudah 2015-2016 sudah berjumpa dan berbincang benda ini secara tertutup. Dan N pun buat kajian-kajian dan sebagainya. Tapi waktu itu pun kita macam, dua hal besar yang patut kita buat adalah pertama tentang legalisasi, kita ada tim legal. Satu lagi kita boleh turun untuk faham betul isu diorang macam mana sebenarnya. Jadi kami waktu itu kami tidak ada kekuatan lah untuk pergi ke arah legal, dan ke arah politikal pula kita pun tidak ada kita tidak nampak ada kecenderungan orang-orang politik mahu membantu komuniti ini. Jadi apa yang kami buat adalah kami turun sendiri ke dalam kampung dan tinggal di dalam kampung untuk mengamati hal-hal yang berkaitan dengan stateless inilah. Jadi sebenarnya ramai orang yang kata komuniti stateless ini dia adalah komuniti pendatang. Itu yang pasti PTI dan sebagainya. Jadi hal-hal beginilah sebenarnya yang kita kena ambil tahu semula. Dan saya jenis tidak suka untuk membawa naratif pergaduhan kaum ataupun pergaduhan agama yang memang jelas semakin dibenih lah di negeri Sabah. Seolah-olah kita berbeza, ada orang merampas hak kita dan sebagainya. Jadi bila kami turun di kampung, apa yang kami lihat betul karena komunitas memang tidak pernah merasakan mereka ada hak terhadap diri mereka sendiri. Tidak pernah ada rasa hak untuk kehidupan yang lebih baik. Itu yang sebenarnya sangat tragis di dalam komuniti. Sehingga kan mereka berserahlah, maksudnya kalau mereka hari ini rumah mereka datang polis kah, datang penguasa kah, mereka cuma boleh atau menyelamatkan diri mereka sahaja. Jadi hal-hal sebeginilah sebenarnya yang menjadi putaran ganas hidup mereka, yang mana kanak-kanak mereka tidak akan membuat rumah yang sebaiknya, karena bila-bila masa mungkin mereka dihalau, bila-bila masa mereka akan ditangkap. Jadi mereka akan buat rumah ala kadar sahaja. Jadi bila kita pergi itu dengan keadaan rumah begitu, kita pun jadi macam sadar. Jadi dan di dalam keadaan yang sangat miskin itu, mereka juga terjebak dengan tidak menghantar anak orang ke sekolah. Kalau mereka tidak hantar anak mereka ke sekolah, akan banyak lagi isu-isu yang akan muncul. Ketika anak itu tidak ada didikan moral, tidak tahu mana baik mana buruk, terjebak dengan masalah menghidupkan, mengedar dada, berpeleseran di pekan-pekan, sehinggalah ada yang menjadi pelacur kanak-kanak, ada yang banyak hal menjadi kuda tunggangan sebenarnya. Jadi dan ketika mereka juga tidak ada pendidikan, populasi mereka akan meningkat akibat mereka tidak ada pendidikan seksual. Mereka tidak ada perancangan kekeluargaan, jadi populasi mereka tidak berkembang akibat mereka tidak tahu merancang bagaimanakah pendapatan mereka yang ada sekarang itu harus ada anak berapa dan sebagainya. Tambah lagi tidak ada pendidikan, mereka juga mengawinkan anak mereka di awal usia. Seawal usia 14 tahun, 15 tahun, 16 tahun. Jadi hal-hal begini bermula daripada tidak diberi hak pendidikan itu sendiri, dan tidak ada hak pendidikan, tidak pergi sekolah, akan berkembang lagi mereka tidak pandai menguruskan dokumentasi mereka, sehingga mereka ditipu, mereka disuruh bayar begini sekian, mereka disuruh pergi KK, pergi ke Tawau dan sebagainya, mereka dibagi kad palsu, ini sehingga mereka mengaku banci itu adalah dokumentasi, sehingga mereka merasakan surat-surat, apa-apa surat mereka disuruh simpan, inilah IC kamu. Jadi benda-benda begitulah yang terjadi di dalam komuniti ketika mereka tidak ada pendidikan. Selain mereka daripada tidak pendidikan, mereka akan jadi buruh kanak-kanak, buruh paksa yang dibayar gaji murah dengan masa yang panjang, tidak dapat hak kesihatan dan sebagainya. Jadi ini yang terjadi real di dalam komuniti, yang mana hidup mereka ini di dalam ketakutan setiap hari. Mereka takut untuk tidur nyenyak, sebab bila masa mungkin orang akan tangkap mereka takut pergi bersekolah, mungkin mereka kena tangkap di tengah jalan, ketika pergi kerja, ketika pergi hospital dan sebagainya. Jadi keadaan-keadaan begini berlaku dari generasi ke generasi sampai hari ini, dan populasi mereka berkembang, dan mahu tidak mahu mereka kena mencari jalan keluar juga untuk hidup. Jadi itulah kalau kita nampak banyak mereka di mana ada ruang-ruang kosong, mereka akan pacak rumah mereka, tempat mereka tinggal dan sebagainya. Mereka akan cuba cari kerja di mana-mana saja. Kalau di Pekan-Pekan Sepor, Tawau, Ladatu, di Sandakan, di Kota Kinabalu, banyaklah kita nampak kanak-kanak ini meminta-minta sedekah dan sebagainya. Mereka tidak ada ruang lain lagi yang mereka boleh nikmati hidup ini. Jadi di sanalah mereka berpeleseran. Ya, terima kasih.
From my part, I think I just want to go back to how, like macam si Mukmin said kan, dulu there wasn't, people were not talking about it bah. Even my own NGO circle, when I talk about it, kena, I have the senior activists will be like, what have you done for your own people? Kau orang Pinampang kan? What have you done for your own orang Pinampang? Now until to that point bah, like, and it was always looked at as they will always look as people who are taking away jobs from indigenous people. So in the beginning, there was this whole narrative about indigenous people against illegal immigrants, begitu. So even for me, I started in 2009. That time, no, I mean even now also kan, if you look at NGOs working on the issue of migration itself kan sangat sikit. It's most of the NGOs who are working on this issue are education based. So at that time lagi lah tiada. I had to go. What I did to learn more about it is I had to go to Peninsula and talk to people who were working with migrants and refugees in Peninsula. So at that time I was talking to people like, I don't know if you know Padian Adwa, Latifah Koya, Dr. Hartini Zainuddin. So they were my mentors nih. So I wasn't getting any support from here. Somehow this issue, even though I have this perspective where, you know, when you talk about human rights, that human rights people will understand this issue. That they will be able to see from my perspective that everybody sama rata. You cannot say indigenous people, we have to fight for indigenous people more than migrants, documented stateless. But no, actually the situation is, that was what was happening lah. And even when I went into, I did my postgrad, even I went to academia, same thing. When I was presenting my thesis, you know, years of research, and then you know what, the first thing that was asked by one of the senior staff academic there, jadi kamu bagi dorang semua IC. Like, oh my God, I just presented the whole about, you know, the whole even talking about what I'm talking, what kind of documentation is needed, you know, what kind of protection system is needed, and the thing that always balik to their minds is IC. So actually, when we talk about this issue in Sabah, there's already a trauma. There's already a state trauma on the issue of giving documentation because of the alleged Project IC lah. So, and because of that, every time there's an election, state election, itu saja kena kasih main-main. It's the tool that they always, because it's like so, it's hard to blame people in power because you cannot touch them, begitu. But the easiest to blame is the poor and the vulnerable lah. So that's why I feel it's the scapegoating of the communities because senang. It's just blame them lah. So that was what's happening every time political season, kena kasih api. even like people like Bani, in the beginning when he first started put in politics, he was talking against. Thank goodness there was a change in narrative lah, and they're starting to understand that. But it took so much time to get to how the narrative is today lah. And I am so thankful to the student movement, because that was the time yang suddenly people started talking about statelessness. I was always, when I first started this work kan, I was actually quite I was burnt out, because anything I have to say mesti ada kena tembak. So there you have this student movement who doesn't care anything about apa people cakap. They did concerts, they went to communities, and they just did their thing. And for me, it took a lot of load off my shoulders. I'm like, okay, I'm not in this alone anymore. And then I think you were with Bentara Kata also. They also had their work, and more people started talking about it. So which built it to where it is today. If you go back 10 years ago, people were not talking about this at all, even in NGO circles. So the issues that which for me, why I also talk about knowledge is because anytime the government try to introduce something to take the next step, to do something other than deportation saja kan, it's always the public actually is the main pushback. So I feel there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of lack of knowledge, even who are stateless. And even among the stateless communities, derang pun, we have a lot of people children of mixed marriages who don't have documentation because the parents didn't know the documentation process. So that's why it's part of our work also lah.
Mukmin, saya mau tanya saja, because Anne sudah share pasal dia punya challenges kan untuk kasih shine a light on this issue ba. But for you kan, do you share the same challenges on like public perception kah? Macam ada orang pandang rendah pasal kamu punya perjuangan ini.
Okey, pertama kalau pandang rendah terhadap ini paling besar lah. Sebenarnya sebab benda ini jadi awal-awalnya tidak ramai orang bercakap isu stateless ini secara terang-terangan ketika tahun 2015. Ada perbincangan macam dorong N, Sinia, Meldi, Jolo waktu itu pun banyak berbincang. Tapi bila kita mau bercakap perkara ini secara terang-terangan seperti N cakaplah, N yang tinggal di Penampang, mereka memang akan ada kena tuduhan-tuduhan. Begitu juga dengan saya lah ketika itu yang orang mengatakan bahawa ini berjuang untuk PTI, ini berjuang untuk anak-anak ini apa namanya? Golongan-golongan pengganas dan sebagainya. Ini banyaklah kita terima. Dan paling penting ketika itu isu ini tidak boom lagi. Kan tidak menjadi besar lagi, orang menjadi ganjil. Kita tahu anak-anak itu di tepi-tepi jalan, kita istilahkan mereka sebagai palau, pilak, istilahkan apa-apa sajalah sebenarnya. Tapi kita tidak tahu sebenarnya anak ini status, anak ini golongan yang tidak ada dokumen. Kita kebanyakan tidak faham isu itu. Jadi orang pun awal-awal tu dia agak kebaruan lah. Dan mau terlibat, mau menyokong dan sebagainya memang agak susah lah. Sehingga kan sampai sekarang sebenarnya ramai juga pihak-pihak tertentu yang tidak mau bekerja sama dengan kita kerana ada orang mahu membantu tapi mahu membantu cuma yang ada sudah kad warga negara. Jadi benda-benda begitu kita agak susah lah. Kita mau masuk institusi, mau masuk benda-benda yang agak formal tu agak susah juga, cabaran yang sangat-sangat besar. Jadi tapi persepsi sebenarnya kita terpaksa mengakui bahawa sememangnya ada bermacam-macam persepsi terhadap masyarakat ini. Seperti saya katakan tadi, ada yang melihat ini adalah tentang perbezaan kaum, ini tentang perbezaan agama, ada tentang perbezaan sebagainya. Ditambah lagi kita tidak boleh mengedepikan kita ada sejarah-sejarah yang hitam tentang projek IC, tentang angka sebuah agama itu tiba-tiba naik mendadak dan sebagainya. Benda-benda beginilah yang sebenarnya menjadi alat kepada orang-orang politik mempergunakan isu ini secara besar, maksudnya dikenakan tempias hal-hal ini kepada semua orang, walaupun orang itu tidak bersalah pun, tidak ada kaitan, tidak mendapat kepentingan pun daripada hal tersebut. Saya kuranglah berminat untuk membawa naratif perkauman atau agama ini, karena saya percaya ini adalah hal yang ditiupkan oleh orang-orang politik hanya untuk proyek kekuasaan sahaja. Tetapi kita kena akui juga di dalam masyarakat mereka sendiri juga, mereka juga ada persepsi buruk terhadap orang yang dokumen ini. Mereka dianggap pengotor, mereka dianggap memang tali barut pengganas dan sebagainya. Ini yang menyukarkanlah kita punya gerak kerja di lapangan, sehingga kan kalau kita pergi ke sebuah kampung itu, tidak semua ada pihak lah, ada komuniti yang tidak bersetuju kita memberikan pendidikan kepada mereka. Itu yang menjadi susah lah. Tapi bila kita teruskan juga dengan projek-projek pencerahan, kempen-kempen, hal-hal ini, kita sebenarnya dapat ini bergerak secara positif lah. Kalau kita nampak sekarang pun, daripada isu stateless ini awalnya adalah subculture, adalah culture-culture yang kecil saja. Sekarang ini mula dibincangkan secara besar-besaran, secara terus-terus, secara terang-terangan sebenarnya. Jadi ini hal yang bagi saya sangat positif lah. Dan saya lihat tidak di mana-mana pun anak muda ataupun mahasiswa pelajar sudah mula mau mengangkat isu yang semacam inilah, supaya kita melihat daripada sudut yang lebih baharu, bukan daripada sudut yang dimomokkan oleh orang-orang politik. Jadi itulah setakat persepsi yang saya dapat daripada lapangan. Ya.
Do you want to add anything to that, Anne?
I think speaking on challenges lah kan, one big challenge for the learning centers lah kan, like Bonya Comrade, and there's a lot of learning centers lah across Sabah, is that they are constantly being threatened to be closed down. Not only being threatened, they are being closed down. So we have had a lot of, especially those who are not under because in the plantations, they are the only legal learning centers bah. Because there's an MOU during Pak last time with the Indonesian government. So they are the only legal learning centers. Outside of the plantations, they are all considered non-legal. So learning centers are constantly being closed down. And then when they close down, because of the public sentiments kan, anytime where they find a plot of land or rumah kedai to buka, there's a lot, especially if the community knows about it, there will be a lot of pushback lah. So there have been even in the church that I went to, they were using the multipurpose hall for the learning centers. Church people complain about it. They had to close down, and they had to go everywhere to try to look for a plot of land just to build the learning centers. So they are already doing a good job of giving the education to these children who the government doesn't want to give education to, but they're also being threatened to close down. And then like Mukmin said macam, this one was from a government person lah I was talking to, dia bilang, we don't know what they are, tidak tahu apa yang dorang ajar di sana learning center. Mana tahu the next thing you know, begini sudah dorang depan kita punya government buildings. So they have this perception like we don't want the learning centers there because we don't know what they're teaching. They might be teaching these children to be terrorists, that kind of thing. So not only, I mean, they're already doing a good job, but they face all these threats to not being able to do their work, the good work that they are doing. So, and then when you talk to the education department, they'll be like, we have processes, ada proses untuk register, and then you try to do the process, you cannot fulfill any of the requirements, because the requirements is, you have to have a proper building, the building have to be this specification, you have to have this kind of teachers, the teachers have to have this kind of qualifications, and a lot of these learning centers, dari pocket dirang ni ba, the money that what they can use is just the money from their pockets. Teachers are, a lot of them are volunteers. I've met a learning center where they give a token of 50 ringgit a month to the teachers. Now, so these are the kind of situations that they face. So, but not so it's not only it's so hard to do the work that they are doing. It's even the threats to the good work that they are doing. And another point actually I wanted to raise when I thought back is I'm going to I love Ilan's narrative of Tanah dan Air, because I felt that the voice this issue of statelessness or undocumentedness kan, I also feel it's also because of the rise of the voices of the young people from the East Coast, bah. Because being in the NGO circle pun, we are very actually KK centric or areas near KK. So so when I felt, I'm not sure if Mokbin agrees with me, but I felt when the voices of the East Coast, the youths, the young people of the East Coast were raised, that was when, this issue really became more mainstream lah, to what it is today. So that's why I really like when Ilan had the exhibition about the Tanah dan Air, because I really feel that we always forget as KK people and we celebrate keamatan and we think that's all there is to Sabah. But we forgot that for years and years, migration has happened. Even before borders were there, migration has happened between North Borneo, Philippines, Indonesia, and it's okay. Kita pun orang kita juga buka tanah sini sana, go Pinampang, pergi Ranau, pergi mana-mana, and it's normal kan. And because of that migration in the east coast of Sabah, of course lah, you will have the same cultures as South Philippines, the Bajau. So the Tausug there is the Suluk here, So all this, there is actually the same cultures, but with our Kota Kinabalu centric mind, anybody who's not Kadazan Dusun Murut is not Sabahan. So that is what we face in even in government when people apply for documentation in government offices. Kau betul kah kau dusun? No, just because they have dark skin, not like that. So they already have this mindset that only the lighter skin or only those who are Kadazan Dusun Murut are the real Sabahans. When the Suluk and the Bajau are not the real Sabahans. Padahal they've been here as long as a lot of us have been here juga. So, yeah, just wanted to add that.
I feel, Kan, from what you guys have been sharing, Kan, it's like as if the system itself, Kan, is forcing a lot of these undocumented persons to be invisible. It's not that they are not trying to be visible, but the system itself is pushing them towards that line of invisibility. So I don't know. That's just what I feel. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that lah. Mukmin ka, Ann ka?
I think why the situation is stuck kan, because there is no jalan out of their undocumentedness bah. Now, for example, a lot of our young people pergi Australia, like that kan, and then after 2 years, they kena invite to apply for PR. After a few years, they kena apply for citizenship. That process, even though in our documents, our laws says it's not happening. And people have been here for 30 years and still applying for their PR and balik-balik, you don't hear anything. So the process is stuck. Our citizenship is one of the most prized citizenship in the world. It's very hard to get a citizenship, except if you're Taib Mahmud's wife, some great footballer, but if you are no one, it's really hard. And there is perception that why we are doing that is because of like the alleged Project IC. Because of that, there was a 300% increase in population, if I'm not mistaken, and they're trying to balance that off. Okay, so that's one perspective. Another perspective I hear is that because there's a lot of syndicates, which is true, there's a lot of syndicates out there that is preying on the desperation of people who needs documents for their children, especially. So, sorry.
It's a huge business.
It's a huge business. It's a syndicate. Like kena tangkap kan? Like We had JPN offices in Sandakan, kena tangkap. So it's a syndicate. It's a huge, huge business. So that's why when I was asking JPN also, why is it so hard? Why some of my friends applying for PR in Semenanjung seems to be easier? Then they said itulah because of the syndicate. So they're much, much stricter. Even the process, I'm not sure if you all know, but kalau lahir lewat, after 40 days, you belum register your child kan, you have to get the endorsement from magistrate for it to be recognized as a burden of proof for the IC in the future. So that's Sabah only has that process. So there's this, it's the system lah. It's the system that is there, which I felt was sparked from our dark history lah. And the thing is, every time that we try to do a documentation, of course there has been processes where they try to document through the IMM 13, through the Surat Banci, the burung-burung and all that. But today, what we see is itulah the array of documents that's out there lah, banyak. There's banyak documents out there which made the situation even more messy lah today. It still comes back to when the government tries to do something, because we are so we get so caught up in the election campaigns that anything that the next step, like the government tried to document, had to introduce, like recently there was also the announcement to have the document kan, pun the number one challenge is the people. So itulah, I feel the big challenge that we have as Sabahans is the Sabahans ourselves. So I feel the communications aspect is a very important aspect when trying to solve this issue as well. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you and Mukmin. Sebelum kita pergi ke sesi soal jawab, saya ada soalan Pak Mukmin. Tertanya-tanya juga. Kita kenal lama sudah, tapi tak ada peluang mau tanya kau personally. Apa yang mencetuskan kau, menggerakkan semangatmu untuk turunkan kakimu untuk berjuang dalam isu ni lah? Apa pencetusmu sebagai seorang personal lah, sebagai Mukmin Nantang, bukan sebagai Borneo Comrade?
Okey, secara pribadinya, aku tinggal di Tawau kan. Di Tawau ni, aku tinggal di dalam satu keadaan yang ada privilege lah. Aku tinggal di perumahan yang proper, yang mana di sekeliling perumahan kami itu ada kampung-kampung yang dilabel tinggan ataupun kampung-kampung yang mereka menyewa di atas tanah-tanah orang. Jadi banyaklah di sekeliling perumahan dekat rumah itu. Jadi tapi waktu kecil kita berkawan, kita tak fikir benda-benda macam kau bangsa apa, kau agama apa, kau warga negara apa kan, kau hitam putih dan sebagainya. Kita sama-sama main guli, kita sama-sama main bola, kita sama-sama pergi curi mangga dan sebagainya kan. Jadi tapi bila aku mula membesar, aku mula terfikir kenapa ada kawan-kawanku tidak pergi sekolah kan, tidak boleh pergi sekolah kerajaan. Bila aku pergi ke rumah dorang, aku hairan kenapa rumah mereka sangat kecil dan ada yang tinggal di bawah kolong orang yang besarnya sama saiz dapur rumahku kan. Di situlah tidur, di situlah makan, di situlah buat aktiviti dan sebagainya. Jadi aku mula fikir kenapa ada orang yang di luar sana terlalu kaya, ada yang terlalu miskin. Sehingga bila aku semakin besar, aku sekolah menengah, sudah boleh pergi ke pekan, ke bandar, aku lagi mula tengok ada budak-budak minta sedekah, ada budak jual-jual kacang, goreng dan sebagainya. Jadi benda-benda ini yang sebenarnya secara organik membentuk aku punya pemikiran. Kenapa ada manusia yang hidup dengan keadaan yang tidak sama? Sedangkan kanak-kanak itu kan dia lahir dia tidak minta kan. Kalaulah ada kanak-kanak ni dibangun untuk lahir macam mana, semua kanak-kanak mau ada dokumen kan. Dia boleh pilih bangsa, dia boleh pilih agama dan sebagainya. Tapi mereka tidak ada pilihan. Jadi itu yang saya fikir, privilege yang saya ada, dokumen yang saya ada, dan pendidikan yang saya ada di universiti, saya fikir saya perlu buat sesuatu untuk melihat perkara ini. Sebab benda ini daripada saya kecil. Daripada kecil saya mula lihat. Dan ada satu ini secara pribadi lah yang memberi impak besar terhadap diri saya adalah saya ada kawan baik di kampung. Kawan baik saya itu ketika saya sudah masuk universiti, dia stay lah di kampung sebab dia tidak dapat masuk universiti. Dia tidak dapat sekolah. Ini saya dia sebenarnya ada surat lahir. Tapi ada beberapa urusan yang dia urus daripada sekolah darjah 6. Dia urus dia punya IC umur 12 tahun sampailah dia sekolah SPN, IC-nya tidak siap-siap. Okay? Jadi dia tidak dapat masuk universiti. Kawan saya ni, kalau kami peperiksaan daripada darjah sampai menengah, kami punya keputusan hampir sama. Kalau ada subjek dia A, saya tidak A. Saya A, dia tidak A. Ada subjek kami sama-sama dapat A. Tapi gara-gara saya ada dapat masuk universiti, saya ada dokumen, saya ada duit sedikit, saya masuk universiti. Tapi dia dapat. Semester pertama daripada universiti, kawan saya ni tadi jual dada. Waktu tu macam saya betul-betul tidak boleh terima lah. Sebab ini kawan-kawan baik yang punya baik gila babi, yang sama-sama belajar, saya tahu dia macam mana, dan saya tidak tahu dia boleh terjebak sampai ke tahap sebegitu. Kan? Jadi bila dia jual dada dengan alasan tidak ada tempat dia boleh kerja, dia tidak ada, dia terpaksa tanggung adiknya. Jadi benda-benda ini yang meruntunlah jiwa saya macam, oh kena buat something lah. Itu ketika saya pulang dari semester pertama daripada universiti 2014, 2015 tu saya buat benda ni sungguh-sungguh lah. Saya fikir mungkin tidak besar yang saya boleh lakukan, tapi sekurang-kurangnya bolehlah menjadi padang awal ataupun benih-benih perkara ini dapat diselesaikan. Saya tidak rasa perkara ini boleh selesai minggu depan, tahun depan, 5 tahun akan datang. Tapi saya mau ada kemungkinan kita semua kembali kepada fitrah kemanusiaan tentang solidariti, tentang saling berbagi, saling membantu orang lain, dan saling melihatlah kalau ada orang yang susah, orang yang tidak dapat haknya, kita bantulah. Saya fikir ya mungkin secara pribadi sebab itulah sebabnya saya masuk ke dalam kampung, dan saya tidak fikirlah langsung tentang saya fikir saya ada privilege, yang saya ada pendidikan, saya tahu macam mana mau cari duit sampingan, dan saya boleh ada kelebihan untuk masuk kampung, tinggal dalam kampung, dan saya fikir daripada itulah saya dapat menikmati hidup sebagai orang stateless ini, dan saya dapat membawa cerita-cerita mereka keluar. Ya, dengan usaha dengan impian agar perkara ini bolehlah diselesaikan di tahun-tahun akan datang.
Hai Mukmin, hai Ann, Ilan di sini. Saya nak minta tanya tentang kerajaan. Kalau dia ada apa-apa saja where they realize that statelessness adalah satu isu yang besar di Sabah yang tak akan pergi ke mana-mana kalau kita tak buat sesuatu. So, what is their plan actually? What's the plan by the state government to address statelessness? Ataupun dia langsung tak mau buat apa-apa? Itu soalan saya.
They have, I think when we talk to people who are in JPN, government officers, senior officers, thank goodness they also invite us to these round tables to talk, to have a dialogue. You see that they want this problem to be solved but one thing also, I mean, but when you talk about political will it's basically suicide usually if you government. So it seems like from what I hear immigration wants to, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that the whole documentation the idea is either started or is something that the immigration is trying to push for, that documentation that yang it has been rebranded a few times PSS, and then now is, I don't know what's the name now. So for me, I feel they want to do something. But before they do something, they have to get the sign off from the powers that be, and also from the people lah. So that's why they want to do, but they cannot just do. They cannot, because I feel if it's just, I'm not sure how the government works, but I feel like even though the government agencies want to do something, they cannot do until the ministers give their okay, that kind of thing.
And the ministers won't because political society.
Yeah, political mileage, because whenever you take that up, I mean, it was the downfall for me. I felt that was the downfall of Warisan lah. During the Kimanis by-election, that was the issue yang balik-balik kena kasih main. Warisan as the party yang what's that? They even have all these stickers where Shafi'i was labeled as the PTI. What was that? Macam the PTI supporter lah. So you can see that it was the downfall of, because that time Shafi'i was very he said a few things that was actually moving forward. He talked a lot about statelessness actually, but he tried to communicate it in a way yang I feel like he was really thinking about the narrative. How do you package it out that people won't just and say no. He talked about children. I remember he talked a lot about children. And then it was something that people didn't, that was caught by the opposition party at that time, and that was used against them lah. So I feel like whatever the government tries to resolve, but also even the coordination between the government departments pun is problematic. When you talk about the issue kan, there's a lot of pointing of fingers. This agency punya kerja. It's this agency punya kerja. So far, I felt the most progressive is the health department lah. Even many years before the pandemic, they already saw this coming. So if we don't vaccinate these children, if we don't take care of this society, this part of the community, the whole society is going to kena. So this was talked about them years before the pandemic happened, and that's exactly what happened. Even before the pandemic, there was the polio case kan. After 30 years, polio tiba-tiba, and it started among unvaccinated children because we are not giving vaccination to non-citizen children. We were, but you say you pay lah 100 plus. No, like they don't have that kind of money. So a lot of them were unvaccinated. But the other departments seems like there's no coordination. There's a lot of pointing of fingers. But I can see that they also want to resolve the issue.
I know during COVID, for the first time, there's a kind of census survey counting populations in the pulau around Semporna. For instance, that's the one I know about the most. Tapi there was a kind of unofficial census happening. Do you have thoughts about that, you or dengan Mukmin, about this kind of unofficial census? I mean, for example, me personally, I think it is a necessary thing to know numbers. But was there, it's just that process through the medical pandemic lens, has it helped to make bridges, even with ESCOM doing a handout to the sea-based stateless?
Kau ada dengar kah pasal tu, Mukmin? Census, banci. Banci, ada kah? Tadi Ilanca pasal itulah, macam ada unofficial census dalam community, island communities kah?
Masa COVID,
during,
semua, dia kira orang masa itu. Unofficially, they kasih jarum, tapi on the side, they kira orang.
Oh, like that. Actually, with the vaccination process, they still have to register through the MySejahtera. So all the data actually is there. They were collecting data when people come forward for vaccination. They won't just. They have a. I was volunteering for the vaccination process. So what they do is they whoever in the group has a phone, they put everybody in that group under tanggungan.
Dependent.
Yes, under dependent. So they collected all the data. So actually the most latest data on that community is through the health department. That's why for me, the way forward for documentation, because people are so scared of legal identification document, is to use the health angle. So talk about health cards, but you have all the data you have that you need for an identity. But how do you communicate it in a way that isn't threatening to the local community?
It's beneficial to the local community who are selfish.
And yeah, but this is also apparently this was also a strategy done in, I'm not sure if got the right country, but I think it was Thailand, because Thailand also has a stateless problem from Myanmar. So apparently they also use the health card punya way. So actually the pandemic, the COVID, the health situation has helped in getting the conversations open about health for undocumented persons. Because before that, it was very hard. But suddenly, because it's the interest of the people to be safe, suddenly, okay lah, kasih vaksin diorang lah. But then, so that we have the latest data lah because of that. The health department has the data. I don't have the data.
Halo. Saya mau tanya Mbak, tapi sebelum itu saya memang setuju yang isu pasal stateless ini sangat penting dan urgent lah, sebab ini kehidupan orang setiap hari kan. Dia bukan macam if you kasih lama-lama lagi ataupun next generation lagi, it will become worse and worse kan. Tapi saya pun masih macam mau belajar tentang isu ini. Yang I want to ask yang pasal naratif, pasal dari segi Philippine government di Rambalang yang dia promote yang Sabah ini, ataupun macam ada ada di Facebook yang dia kasih tahu yang Sabah milik Filipina semua kan. Ini dia macam dia buat itu sentimen orang tambah takut yang macam macam sekarang macam Rusia mau ambil Ukraine, tidaklah begitu teruk, but something like that lah. Jadi pernahkah macam kita punya government Malaysia sendiri kan dia berbincang dengan macam Filipina punya government untuk macam really berbincang pasal isu ini, macam this issue lah.
Okay, mungkin nanti boleh tambah lah secara detail perbincangan. Saya fikir masalah utama Filipina adalah dia tidak mahu buka kedutaannya di Sabah. Jadi ketika dia tidak mahu buka kedutaannya di Sabah, ini yang menyukarkan lah untuk kita membuat praktik-praktik atau tindakan-tindakan lanjut terhadap masalah stateless di Sabah ini. Tapi apa yang sentimen-sentimen contohnya macam mereka asal dari Filipina dan sebagainya. Saya boleh dengar?
Ya.
Saya suka membawa naratif bahawa etnik-etnik ini sebenarnya kebanyakan lebih dahulu wujud sebelum adanya negara kita. Negara kita ni baru sahaja wujud. Etnik-etnik ini sememangnya ada sebelum adanya negara, dan kita mempunyai sejarah yang panjang sehingga Filipina masih merasakan adalah kaum kerabat daripada sana, masih menganggap ini masih lagi empire mereka dan sebagainya. Tapi apa yang paling penting, ini adalah semua permainan kekuasaan yang sebenarnya tidak memihak pun dengan masyarakat kelas bawah. Maksudnya gara-gara politik ini dan kekuasaan ini, mereka mau berebut tanah, berebut sempadan dan sebagainya. Akhirnya impaknya kepada orang-orang yang berada di dalam sempadan negara Malaysia ini. Yang mana mereka, saya terpaksa bagi tahu bahawa kita ada etnik yang mempunyai susur galur yang sama. Maksudnya mereka ada keluarga di Filipina, mereka ada keluarga di Indonesia, mereka juga ada keluarga di Malaysia. Sebab mereka, perkampungan mereka, keluarga mereka, etnik mereka duluan wujud daripada negara ini. Jadi itu fakta yang asas lah. Jadi tapi masalah dia sekarang ini, ketika sebenarnya isu-isu perebutan, sentimen-sentimen daripada atas ini sebenarnya tidak memihak pun dengan masyarakat di bawah yang sebenarnya harus diberikan hak kemanusiaan. Yang di atas ni mau berebut sentimen dan sebagainya itu terpulang mereka. Tetapi yang paling penting sekarang setiap manusia yang berada di dalam sempadan negara Malaysia, sepatutnya negara Malaysia ini bertanggungjawab terhadap tubuhnya. Jadi kita harus memberikan hak mereka untuk hidup dengan baik, akses kesihatan. Kalau kanak-kanak mereka harus mendapat hak untuk pergi berpendidikan. Tapi apa yang saya boleh lihat sebenarnya di lapangan, kanak-kanak ini memang saya tidak pernah lah terjumpa ada tali barut dan sebagainya. Kemungkinan ada tali barut, saya tidak tapi gerakan itu jadi besar ataupun kecil itu kita tidak dapat pastikan lah. Tapi secara jujurnya orang-orang yang dibawa ini betul-betul telus, mereka mau hidup lebih baik, mereka mau kerja lebih baik, mereka mau pergi sekolah dengan lebih baik. Jadi dan banyak daripada mereka yang sudah mengusahakan dokumentasi ini bertahun-tahun, sehingga ada yang sampai ke Putrajaya, tersangkut di Putrajaya. Kalaulah kita menganggap mereka ini adalah tali barut, bermakna mereka tidak ada yang berusaha semacam begini kan? Ada yang ditipu hingga ribuan ringgit. Jadi saya suka membawa naratif daripada bawah karena mereka ini yang menjadi mangsa sebenarnya. Pertemuan antara penguasa, pertemuan orang-orang politik, pertemuan antara kerabat-kerabat diraja dan sebagainya yang mempunyai sejarah-sejarah yang silam ini, orang-orang yang dibawa ini tidak terberi kesan pun. Ya, mungkin Anne boleh tambah sedikit.
Yeah, so I add a bit lah. I think Ilan would know a lot. She has lots of books about the Sulu. But just to, it's a good question by Junia. So just as how this issue is played during political season, the Philippines does the same thing. And in May is the election. So now they're going through that whole campaigning process. Sama lah. So most probably you will see all this narrative lagi lah in social media because this is what they play. So sama. That's why that's my same feeling when we have all these ministers in the Philippines talking about I'll make sure Sabah will return to us, that kind of political punya campaign. Dalam hati saya, you never ask us, we living here. Kenapa kau tiap pernah tanya kami mau di Sabah kah? Kalau kami mau Malaysia kah? Kami mau di Philippines kah? So it's always a game of these powers kan, but never think about the people on the ground ba. And it's such a sensitive topic that no ambassador from the Philippines is willing to take the topic up. So there should be, I think during Mahathir's time before. I forgot the name of the president, but during that time there was some dialogues. But after that, the recent 2 ambassadors, there hasn't been. I think the previous ambassador before this there was some, but the recent one there's no sound at all. So it's also not a popular topic for them. It's the same as our situation here. It's not a populist topic. So that's why they don't want to talk about it. And historical, but there's a lot of actually different stories lah on how this whole land claim come to be. So I think I won't share because there's a lot of I'm not sure which one is true, but it's also, but we have to also look at it as it's actually also a frustration because I don't know if any of you saw the recent news where there was a legal case about the Sabah claim in France kah? Mana? Spain. Okay. So it's also the frustration of the people who used to be the Sultanate, people who used to be known as superpowers, and then suddenly they are left with nothing. So there's also the frustration of, we used to be Sultanate and then now we don't have anything. So there's the whole recognition part, but there's also the years of discrimination towards the Muslim community in Philippines, because Philippines is predominantly Catholic, kan? So there has been also years of discrimination towards the Muslim community, which also sparked this kind of sentiments lah, where there is a rebellion, and also like a lot of southern Filipinos who are Muslim, they identify more with Malaysia as compared to Philippines, And they always say it's the culture, the food. So the identification, the culture kan is more towards Malaysia. So you have all these different things in play, which the Philippines and the historical reasons which brought to where it is today lah.